So this is the first review of hopefully many to come that will be going up onto my channel. And today we're going to be talking about Pinbot for the Nintendo Entertainment System. This is the first video game that I'm going to review on this channel, and particularly because it's the first game that I've been able to successfully capture video onto my computer with. The actual setup for this is completely barbarian, definitely not elegant whatsoever. There's cables laying everywhere, adapters and shit everywhere. It's a complete fucking mess, but it works, and what you're seeing right now is the fruits of all that labor that I did at about 1:30 this morning. So there you go. And honestly, I picked a really good game to test this out with, because Pinbot is just one of those games that's really easy to pick up and play, and really fun to play for just an hour or so. You don't necessarily play it for like the entire day or anything. It's not a story-driven game, so you're not really compelled to just keep going and going and going, but it is a great time waster. Pinball games have always just been like that for me. I remember playing 3D Space Cadet Pinball on computers back when I was little, when Windows XP was still the relevant operating system, and even up until Windows 7 was the current operating system of the day. And yeah, I even still play it nowadays, so pinball games like this have always just been a really good game for me, because I've always just been able to pick them up and play them, and not feel like that I'm like absolute dog shit at them. I actually feel like that I'm pretty decent at pinball games, and what you'll see here is actually probably my best pinball or Pinbot game that I've ever played. And I played this at like 2:30 in the morning, so the fact that I even got as high of a score as I got about 3 million. You'll see later on in the footage, but I got about 3 million on this, which I think is my best score to date on Pinbot. I'd played a couple other games after that, but it was pretty much downhill from there. I was so dead tired trying to set up all this, trying to see if it all worked, and surprisingly, everything works. So now I've got an actual way to capture footage from my game consoles to my computer, which is a lot harder than you would imagine. I had to go through hours of just trying to find different solutions that would work out, and I think I finally found one that's actually going to work out for me in the end. Now, a little bit about Pinbot itself. It was originally an actual physical pinball machine made by Williams in 1986. And I thought, like, I didn't know that it was an actual pinball machine at first. When I first bought this game, I just thought that it was a made-for-NES pinball game. I didn't know that it was actually based on any real pinball machine, which is frankly stupid, come to think of it, because most pinball games are based on actual machines, but I didn't learn about that until really yesterday, so kind of a late bloomer to that. And this version was made by Rare in 1990, one of the premier game publishers from the heyday of Nintendo up until their acquisition by Microsoft in 2002, somewhere around there. It was somewhere around in that era. But Rare was a great developer for Nintendo. They produced such classics as Donkey Kong Country, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Perfect Dark. Yeah, I think Perfect Dark was also a Rare game. Just a lot of really great cult classic titles for Nintendo systems, and this is definitely one of those. This is a very underrated game, honestly. I don't see Pinbot being talked about by really anybody, which is really weird because it's a fantastic game. And what I really love about Pinbot is just how simple it is while also being complex. And that's another reason why I loved 3D Space Cadet Pinball, is because you can play it to how you're actually supposed to play it, but you can also just dick around and have fun with it. And to me, those are the best kinds of games where, yeah, you can do things in a certain way, but you can also just do whatever you want and have the same sort of fun. And those are the games that I usually vibe with the most. The way you're actually supposed to play Pinbot is you have this grid of lights up at the top of the board, and you're supposed to launch the pinball up there and light up as many of those dots as possible until you light up the whole grid. It's about a 5x5 grid of lights. And once you do that, these two holes open up, which is basically Pinbot's eye sockets. And you're supposed to launch a pinball up into one of those holes, and it locks into place. And then a second pinball drops down, and then you're supposed to lock that into the other hole. And once you have both of those, you start a multi-ball round where everything is multiplied. All the scores are multiplied by 2. And then you also have the shot. You also have the chance to shoot a pinball back up into one of the sockets, and then you can go for a big multiplier in that space. So what you're really supposed to do is to get as many multipliers as possible to traverse through the solar system. When you get to the scoring screen after you lose a ball, you'll see these multipliers at the bottom that go by Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, and all the way up until you reach the sun. And that's basically your multiplier for your score after each round. And you can tell that this is a very old game by the fact that they still consider Pluto a planet. Actually, come to think of it, I think Pluto lost its classification as a planet back like in 2006, and I was born in 2001, so I'm still of the last generation to vaguely remember Pluto being a planet, which is pretty interesting. And the game calls the multipliers solar values, and you achieve that by going up the left ramp at the top of the screen. It plays a little jingle as the ball goes around the top and falls back down, and that basically increases your multiplier for that round. Well, actually, it carries over through each round. It's kind of hard to explain. It seems really complicated just like saying it out loud, but once you play it, like, you don't even have to think about it. Like, all I worry about when I play is just to hit the ball on as many things and score as many points as possible. I don't even think about like what the overall objective is in this game, and that's how I am with every pinball game. And as you progress through the game, the playfield will change colors, and then you'll have like these little enemies that appear at the bottom half of the playfield that you can hit with your pinballs to add up more points, which is pretty cool. I really like the enemy after level 1 that when it opens its mouth, it changes the gravity around your ball. So it kind of like orbits around it a little bit. Whenever it opens its mouth. It's pretty cool. And as for the game design itself, it looks really good. For a late NES game, it really looks good. I like the fact that it splits the screen in two, so you can still see your flippers at the bottom of the screen, but it doesn't lose any definition or quality as the ball travels higher and higher up the board. So you're still able to see most of the board, as it were, in the full definition, which is really nice and kind of advanced for the NES, honestly. And tagging along with that, like I alluded to in the beginning, the sound design is just absolutely fantastic. The soundtrack is just perfect for this kind of gameplay. It keeps you in the zone the whole time, and I find it kind of encouraging. The music, encouraging to keep going, and it makes losing not feel as bad. It doesn't hit you with like a game over, yeah, like Sega Rally 2 or something. It doesn't mock you, and the overall quality of the soundtrack is just fantastic. I'm not sure if they're using a different like sound chip or something in this. I haven't actually looked that up, but it sounds really good for the NES. I know a lot of late NES games used their own sound chips in the cartridges themselves to open up more channels for audio and stuff, but it sounds really, really good. And on top of that, you also have the Pinbot, who has sound bites of its own. So whenever the Pinbot talks, the game actually will freeze for a moment while it talks, because speech synthesis on, well, not synthesis, but like speech clips on NES games were really demanding on the CPU, and for a lot of systems of its time. The NES wasn't alone in that, but basically it took up so much resources that they basically had to compress it down as much as they could and then freeze the game while Pinbot talks. I don't even know if the robot's called Pinbot, whatever, but basically when Pinbot talks, the game freezes, and you would think that would have like a disruption in the gameplay, but it really doesn't. I actually find it to be really charming and really well implemented in the game. And again, you gotta consider, this is 1990. The NES hardware was, oh god, it was about 7 years old by the time this happened. So like, the fact that even this was even possible, you kind of have to put it into the perspective of like somebody who is playing that for the first time in 1990. That must have been incredible to hear. And there's a lot of late stage NES games that do that. And then once the Super Nintendo came along and the Sega Genesis, like that became a lot easier, became a lot more seamless. But the fact that it's even possible on the NES at all is just fantastic, in my opinion. So yeah, I love Pinbot, and I will recommend this game to literally anybody who has an NES. It's not necessarily a game that, like, if you have an NES, you have to have it. I'm just saying it's a very well worth it purchase. This game is pretty much worthless nowadays. You can get this easily for like $5, even at retro game stores where they mark up the prices to ridiculous levels. You can still get this game fairly cheap, and pretty much every store you go to will have at least one copy of Pinbot there, usually, and of course you can find it all day on eBay. There will always be copies of it on eBay, and it doesn't go for that much. I'd honestly even spend $10 on this game, it's so good. So if you find this game and you don't already have it in your collection, definitely pick it up. It is well worth your time.